Welcome to this Times Techies webinar. I'm Sujit John, and I have with me my colleague Shilpa Fadnis. The two of us will moderate the discussion. We hope you and your families are staying safe and doing well. Our discussion today is on drones in India and the regulatory landscape. The government's decision to liberalize norms for operating drones in the country for both commercial and non-commercial purposes under the new Drone Rules 2021 has ushered in newer growth opportunities. A slew of startups have emerged in the space, creating innovative use cases and applications in sectors like e-commerce, mining, healthcare, emergency response, logistics. TUI reported about how the government is looking at making this an $18 to $20 billion industry here by 2030. Vaccine delivery by drones and mapping land parcels to give ownership titles have started in the country. Union Aviation Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia expects drone taxi prototypes to become operational in months. Recently, some drone companies commenced trials for beyond visual line of sight operations in India for food delivery. To discuss all of this, we have three distinguished founders of drone companies. We have with us Amit Ganjoo. Amit is the founder and CEO of Washington, DC based ANRA Technologies. ANRA provides, I hope it's ANRA, Amit, or ANRA. What do you call it?
ANRA,
okay. ANRA provides integrated airspace management solutions that are used by commercial and government entities for managing commercial drone operations. Amit is an engineer and a licensed pilot, pursuing his passion in aviation by building and flying experimental aircraft. Prior to founding ANRA, Amit was co-chair for the US Federal Communication Commission's Technical Advisory Council for 5G and IoT. He was also director of engineering and principal architect at Ericsson. Welcome, Amit. Amit is right now in Washington. It's about 8:30 there in the morning. We have Mughilan Ramasamy. Mughilan is co-founder and CEO of Skylark Drones. Mughilan holds a master's degree in aerospace systems from Purdue University, Indiana, US. Mughilan's association with the aerospace industry started at Team Vyoma, the aerodynamics club of RV College of Engineering in Bangalore, which he headed. During his time, he designed over 8 unmanned aerial vehicles, all of which were successfully test flown. He led Team Vyoma to win the NASA Systems Engineering Award for engineering a holistic UAV-based solution. Welcome, Mughilan. And we have Vishal Saurav. Vishal is co-founder and CEO of VFLYX India and XBOOM Utilities. Vishal is an engineer in electrical and electronics engineering from Dayanand Sagar College, Bangalore. He is originally from Ranchi. He quit his job as a software engineer to pursue his dream of becoming a change maker in society and started his own startup venture XBOOM in 2015. VFLYX offers advanced features, counter-error response programming, easy accessibility via mobile tap, and an easily usable GUI. Welcome, Vishal.
Thank you.
Those who are viewing this can send in questions to the Facebook comment box. Shilpa and I'll put them to Amit, Mughilan, and Vishal. I wanted to start with this question on the regulatory changes that happened. Suddenly, I mean, as journalists, we can see this, suddenly a spate of press conferences, press releases, and we can see a lot of new startups emerging. So I know VFLYX had a press conference just a few days ago where they were demonstrating their drones. So Amit, let me start with you. What has changed in the last few months that seems to have excited everybody in the drone industry?
That's a great question, Sujit. So we've had a presence, we set up our presence. We started in India back in 2017. And believe me, it was hard. It's like day and night if you compare then and now the regulatory framework, because we were all banned, everything banned, no drone flights. And even though illegal flights were happening, now we are at the complete other pole of it. But I don't think it necessarily happened overnight. There's a lot of things that were in action behind the scenes, like there was the Digital Sky UTM initiative that was kicked off for creating a nationwide UTM system. And again, that project unfortunately got slow rolled because of the changes in the policy and stuff. And but wheels were set in motion, and there was a set of regulation that was put in place, but that was not ideal to spur the economic growth needed to give a boost to the industry. So with the new ministry coming in and the new joint secretary and secretary in the aviation segment, they wanted to make things move faster. So they were things like expression of interest, right? So the BV loss experiments that happened, and we led two of the consortiums like I was talking about, which we completed over 100 hours. So I think that aviation, you have to, unlike any other industry, the aviation has the highest set of safety standards. Like if you're driving a car and something happens, you can pull over to the side of the car. But in aviation, if something happens, there's no side of the road to pull over to. So inherently, you can't use a rogue mentality. So rightfully so, things were slow rolled. But now that you need to have enough data and metrics to help influence the regulation. And now I think there's data, there have been experiments that have been run, and there are experiments that are being run currently that is providing enough data and metrics to the regulators to say, here's some data we have captured, here are things we can do or cannot do. That helps influence the regulation. And now we've gone from very strict to what I would say is very liberal policies. Time will tell how this impacts. It'll definitely help spur the economic growth and the startups. But I would still caution that we need to be very careful, because there's just one incident that can happen that can make the industry take a step back. But that's what's happened. And I think it's just like any other industry, crawl, walk, run, I say. We are headed in the right direction.
How does this policy compare with what you see in the US, Amit?
I'll use a generic, like US is just one example, but elsewhere. So how do I say this? So I think it's a bit, we have gone from one extreme to the other extreme. I think it's a bit too lenient in some cases, but I keep my fingers crossed that because everyone in this industry, the ecosystem, they want to do things correctly. So just use judgment, safety, and do things the right way, because like I mentioned, it's just a matter of something going wrong. And because it's different when you're flying visual line of sight operations with limited risk thresholds in rural areas. But when you're starting to do flights in dense urban areas and stuff like that, and especially when you start flying beyond visual line of sight, there are a lot of factors that drone is just one component of it. At the end of the it's a means to an end. So you have to factor in other safety consideration, your ground risk, your air risk, what are your contingency management things, all these things need to be considered. So I think the regulations are there, but we probably need some overlying enforcement mechanisms and standards that have to be complied with. And I know there are discussions going on in the ministry and the industry association, which we are part of. So hopefully those things will come into place. So then there are checks and bounds in place. That's what's required.
Okay. Mughilan, you've seen it for 5 or 6 years now. So tell me, Amit says a very liberal policy now. So was it a big change from what you started with and now?
Yeah, I think when we just started the company, drones were banned, right? So from a place where there was nothing called as an industry to having something as an industry and then having regulations on industry, there's of course been tremendous change, right? 20 years ago, drones were more of a hobby. People used to build them out of college workshops or things like that, right? Or for a hobby, flying on aero modeling. That's the extent at which people were thinking about it. Right now, we are seeing drones actually have some economic potential, right? And we believe that suddenly we're talking about few $100 billion of opportunity worldwide, which just sprung up because of this being commercialized, right? So of course, over the 20 years, you see a lot of innovative changes in the sector, technology wise, regulations wise, everything, right? This particular policy, I think per se, I think there are a lot of, like Amit had mentioned, there is some sort of more liberalizing. I think there can be even more in terms of how private players can participate in terms of contributing, something similar to how UPI has exploded in the fintech segment, right? So what are the key elements that we can do in the drone ecosystem so that we have such a UPI movement, right? In the drone space, that's left to be seen. I think there are some pieces where we can actually work. The private players can actually also come and work alongside the government folks to regulators to actually make this a reality of sorts.
Okay, okay. The power has gone off in my place, so you can't see my face probably. But, Vishal, tell me, I mean, you got into drones just a few months ago. I guess it's because of this new liberal policy. You've been in the business of providing various kind of gadgets and all that for the last 5, 6 years, but drones was a few months ago. Is it because of the policy?
Yeah, actually, like we were all waiting for the right time to come, and because of the complications which we were facing in terms of approvals of a drone to fly and the kind of hesitation in the mind of the customers to go through it and to apply it. I mean, like everybody was understanding the kind of application and the importance which it can bring down for their premises or for the different kind of applications. But due to the government regulations, they were all holding back actually. So now with this kind of support from the government, it boosted us to go ahead and starts the manufacturing of the drones in India. And also like the kind of to have to say, like I can just put down some of the facts, like how it has got changed in a way. Like the complications, especially from the civilian point of view, if we see the number of forms, which were like in the number of 25, it has got reduced to 5 just. Okay, and the fees and all, which were supposed to be 72 different types of fees were charged. Now it has got reduced to just 4. Okay, and a lot of approvals and all has got like wiped out completely. And the kind of fees also, amount of money also, which people were paying for the clearance and all, that also has got reduced to at least 10%. So all these things are basically to boost up the whole ecosystem of the drone. And these kind of new changes like introduction of the digital sky platform as a single window, which can basically ease off the process from end to end for a consumer or for a drone manufacturer to go about it. And also the kind of freedom which we have got in terms of, let's say like the earlier, the limit was much less for the height or kind of the zones which were divided. Like the green zones were basically like very less comparatively. So that left almost like nil amount of areas where you can actually fly the drone. But now with the drone policy, they have just made it like anywhere after 8 kilometers from the airport, and then some more liberation is there at a distance of 12-kilometer radius. So this has basically, which was basically before 45 kilometers. So you can imagine the kind of radius it was earlier blocked.
45 kilometers from the airport, is it?
Yes, yes. So earlier it was like that, but now it has got like, we have got much more area unblocked. And thereafter, these the height to which it can fly, that has also
Vishal, I think you're
been zoned.
breaking.
Is been hello.
Yeah. I might be better. Yeah. You were breaking a little. Isn't that so, Shilpa?
Like
Yeah. Vishal,
yeah.
your voice is breaking up. Yeah.
Okay. Just let me fix.
Yeah. Okay, go
Is
on.
it better now?
Yeah.
So with these kind of like liberation in the terms of height, and it will allow lot many industries to come up and they can use it, like as you know, the e-com sector, where the people are looking for the faster and faster delivery. And I mean, like it can help to have a hub-to-hub delivery, to have a basically a faster delivery system setup. And more than e-commerce, I would say, like it can help in saving the lives of many people when you apply these drone technology in medical and healthcare system, and in delivering any kind of emergency supplies like blood or organs. And also it will be very helpful actually. So I see it as a blessing for all of us, and we should be able to utilize it in the best way manner.
Yeah, very interesting use cases can emerge, I guess. Yeah, Shilpa?
Coming to you, Amit, you piloted, food deliveries with Swiggy initially. So if you can take us through, what are initial proof points coming out of those pilots?
So actually we did more than we did food and medical deliveries. So we did with Swiggy and then we had medical deliveries and also the World Economic Forum, the medicines from the sky. So the short answer is I have a friend who uses a term called blood before burritos. So which means humanitarian, and it lines up with what Vishal is saying. The humanitarian aspects where drones help will probably precede any other commercial aspects. There is utility, but me getting pizza delivered is probably on the priority scale is a little lower than saving blood. So that will happen. But in terms of the work we did with Swiggy and with other entities as part of the project, it was a great, like we had done similar stuff elsewhere, but trying it in an Indian environment was a little different, right? Different set of challenges and stuff like that. So we proved that it can be done. It can be done safely, but I would call it more like a middle mile kind of delivery versus the last mile, because if you're expecting to deliver to someone's doorstep in Chandni Chowk, it's not going to happen because of the crowd and stuff like that. So the middle mile is more realistic. The B2B kind of stuff is more realistic. So, but we proved that we can safely integrate in the airspace. We can communicate with whether it's stakeholders such as the air navigation service provider like AAI or DGC, or with the ministry or Air Force, and get the right approvals and give them the situational awareness and keep the drones in a segregated airspace, but eventually it'll be a mixed use airspace. So so in terms of the lessons learned, I think it was good feedback to the regulator and the ministry saying, yeah, this can be done. Now, here are certain additional things that you need to do, because flying from point A to point B, yeah, done. That's not a big deal, but doing it safely and then also addressing the concerns of the other stakeholders in the ecosystem, the law enforcement, the military and stuff like that. So looking at things like remote identification or electronic conspicuity, like a digital license plate for drone. So we did that as part of our consortiums too, where we evaluated different technologies and see what are the pros and cons, what works in which case and stuff like that. So it's always, I like to use this for term like innovation, experimentation, and operationalization. So you innovate, then you experiment, and then that's when the scale you transition towards. So we're still in, I think, the experimentation phase, and different parts of the world, because of the regulatory framework, are at different places. And now we are at a place where I think we're still in experimentation, but it will soon start transitioning towards operationalization.
What's happening in the US? Amazon was also doing things like this. No, are they able to deliver to homes?
No, there are pilots and trials. There's something FAA ran called Integration Pilot Project, which was similar to what India just did. And this was done 2-3 years back in US. And this is the same concept that EOI followed in the VFLYX EOI that Shilpa was just talking about happened in India. So there are deliveries happening in different parts of the country, but they are specific designated areas. It's not all over. It's pre-approved areas and stuff. And where you have to go, you can't just go out and launch an operation. You have to take as part, it's called Part 135. It's one of the regulatory framework under which they are operating as an airline cargo. But you have to have a safety case, like how are you going to ensure the safety? So it's not just I pick a drone and put a package. How do you handle detect and avoid? How do you handle ground risk? How do you handle air risk? And you have to get that safety case approved. So there are limited scale engagements happening in different parts of the country, in Virginia, in Texas, and other places. And like we've done some in Florida. And there's similar things, not just US, and there's similar projects like we are building a nationwide medical delivery network in Scotland, for example, right? So we are enabling that. So there are things happening, but it's not like a carte blanche. Yeah, you go and just launch a delivery operation everywhere. You have to look at each specific area and build a safety case for it. And as long as you can prove to the regulator and their navigation service provider that you can do it safely, you can operate.
Okay.
And I'm not going to name companies because, as you know, there are different companies that do stuff. So I can't speak on their behalf, but there are different projects running in different parts of the world.
Okay. Mughilan, what? Blood before burritos, is that your thing as well? What are the things that you're trying to do with drones?
Great. So one of the things that, at least at Skylark, we are building a drone platform. So we, basically care about what is the end use case of the drones also.
You are supplying to others, is it?
So we work with, we work with mining companies. We work with utilities companies. We work with agriculture. We work with all these large commercial sectors of sorts, right? One of the key reasons is because drones are now changing the way they're conducting their own business, right? The business process is evolving. Because right now, most of the data collection is happening very manually, right? Traditional inspection and surveying is now getting evolved into drone-based inspection and surveying, right? So there's a huge gap in terms of, in terms of how to make this a reality, right? Right from, how do you fly a drone for these applications to all the way up to how do you treat drone-based analytics and so on and so forth, right? So one of the things that we are trying to do is trying to become a doctor for each one of these work sites, so that we can, give the right amount of recommendations and insights to some of these large enterprise customers, right? So at Skylark, what we believe is, we want to, literally, unlock the economic potential of the sky, because we believe that there's going to be a lot of drones and going to be used in different ways. And we want to be one of those key players actually, enabling this to happen from a software angle.
What's been the experience so far of all these inspections and all that? What kind of efficiencies are they bringing?
Extremely high, right? So you can't even compare. So similar to blood before burritos, there's a lot of people who today die because of inspections, right? In terms of power line inspections, in terms of cell phone tower inspections. People actually climb up these towers even today. So for example, if you want to do measurements or you want to inspect certain things in these environments, even in cities, right? People still have to climb up, people still have to do all these things because there's no other alternative technology to do it, right? Okay. So there's been a lot of uptake from a health and safety angle, and also from a complete efficiency standpoint, right? Because it can take 20 minutes to collect this data and another half an hour to possibly to analyze what it is, right? At scale, right? So we are talking about, complete transparency and complete digital transformation of all assets, right? Across the board. Right, need not be only land. It can be, towers. It can be mines. It can be anything, right? So imagine you have almost created digital twin of the entire country of sorts, right? So that scale is kind of possible using drone technology, right? So that's something that we are gunning to do, and that's where we are at.
Okay, Shilpa.
Mughilan, I just wanted to ask you mentioned you're providing a platform play here. So are you offering drone as a service to several other companies?
Not really. So what we are doing is we're offering this platform for multiple drone service providers, as well as, end enterprises who have either purchased the drone or for their own end use, or, service providers who want to use our technology to basically utilize the platform for their end customers also. But in cases where, enterprises want Skylark to help them in data collection as a service, we do that using our partners. So we don't currently own any drone. We don't have any drone on books. We don't have any pilots on our rolls, right? But we do work with a lot of partners today, a lot of young entrepreneurs who have different skill sets, who want to get into the drone business, right? Who want to get into drone services, right? So we power all of them to, basically do the data collection and drone-based data collection of sorts, right? So we enable them with all the tools. We are enabling them very shortly with the training, also drone pilot training also, right? So these guys can become self-sustaining, drone entrepreneurs themselves, right? And so that's something that we are, working towards.
Okay. Vishal, give us an idea. How difficult is it to build a drone with all the intelligence required and all of that? What kind of talent do you require?
Yeah, see, actually, building a drone is one thing, and then building it as per the kind of standard which stands out like to the world, and it has all these kind of safety and kind of all the protocols which has been given by the DGCA is a different thing. Like even a 10th or 12th standard boy can make it. It's not a big deal, but the thing is making is as per the kind of standard drone making is the main challenge here. Okay. And in a way, like how it can, our thing is like how to increase the kind of efficiency of a drone. Like let's say if certain weight and with a certain cost, if it is giving you the specification of what 30 minutes flight time, then how can we make it run for 40 minutes flight time with at the same cost? Okay, because seeing the commercial aspect is very important anywhere in the world and especially in India. And that is one of the most important reason why drone as a product doesn't go well, but as a service, it can reach to the many more segments altogether. So we will be coming up shortly with a plan where we can have a kind of all India network where a lot of people will be joining us to create a good set of drones for various kind of applications, so that we can just have a kind of distributed network of these drone services, which can be liberalized by the many other industries, because you need a proper kind of maintenance to kind of proper operation for it to have a basically kind of best usage coming out of these drones. So in order to do that, and especially when right now it's a kind of transformation stage, so we have to hold hands with these industries and help them in kind of transformation which they have to go through, because right now they are following the traditional ways of handling the data or collection of the data. And I mean, this kind of transformation only we are trying to, how can we make it more smoother and much more adaptive in a way so that it doesn't cost to them on in the pocket also.
What kind of talent do you look for? We often have a lot of youngsters listening to our program here. So, I mean, they also always want to know what to learn, how to get into companies like yours.
Yes. So basically like the aerospace engineering and the mechanical engineering is kind of one of the vital aspects if we see from the hardware point of view. And thereafter it comes to the AI implementation and ML. So which will be useful for the processing the data which will be collecting. So since we will be giving over, so these two kind of verticals we have to look for, hardware as well as kind of software part, which will be basically AI and ML. So definitely programmers and all will be very much needed to bring out the change in the drone industry. And thereafter it comes to the operational. So for that we need youngsters who can who can basically fly the drones, and in various situations where we can deploy them in the various parts of India and they can execute the projects in that way actually. So these three are the major verticals.
Okay. Shilpa, I just wanted to ask Amit also that same question. Amit, what kind of talent do you have in your Noida office, engineering talent and all that? Amit, you're muted, huh?
Sorry about that. No, great question, Sudhir. So my answer is going to be a little bit different. So what we look for is not specific degrees or talents, because I've always been a firm believer is the definition of a skill is something that you can acquire. Programming languages change, everything changes. It's the attitude that we want. We always look for people who can think outside the box, because the problem we focus on airspace and mission management. It's not something you can Google and find a solution for and code. So we look for people who can think outside the box. So we're very selective in the people we bring on. If you're just looking for standard coding and stuff. So I'm trying to answer your question. So yeah, we like people to have an engineering background. So that's the basic requirement. So engineering analytical mind. So as long as they have, then we bring them on board. We bring them into our culture, our way of thinking. As long as, and that's been the biggest challenge for us, finding people who can think outside the box. Everyone can think in the box. I'm going to code this, I'm going to write this, but when you give them a problem and say, solve it, the first question people ask, what programming? I don't care what programming languages you use. Solve the problem. How do you solve the problem? So that's the kind of, so engineers primarily with analytical mind, but we have people, I'll tell you, we have people with like 1 year of experience who outperform people with 8-10 years of experience. It just depends on the attitude. Not sure if I answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Amit, actually, I hear this very often from people now. So I can perfectly understand where you're coming from. Yeah, absolutely. And what you said about this 1 year, who just the other day somebody was saying exactly this, that some of these youngsters can, what the things that they're able to do, their mid-level guys are, and the top-level guys are blown away by the kind of things these youngsters
do. And it's not an IT. The other thing is, India is known for its IT, but I don't think this is an IT problem to solve. IT is an enabler. Software is an enabler. It's not an IT problem. So getting outside of that mindset, getting more on the creative side of things versus a back office kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Shilpa?
From a regulatory landscape, if you can share your thoughts on, there are no-fly zones, several city restrictions. Amit, you spoke about, trying to work alongside the military and get permission. So if you can talk about it from an India standpoint, because in Bangalore also several areas you have a no-fly zone, a no-drone zone restriction. So yeah.
It's funny, just the other day we were at this, we work with Swiggy. So we were looking at that map and figuring out where can we operate in Bangalore. And it's like red. They are very limited green zones. So yes, there is a challenge.
But even now in the new thing, what Vishal was earlier saying, that there's a lot more green now. You're saying in Bangalore, even now there's a lot of red, is it?
Yeah, there's a lot of red all across the country, but it's not. Earlier, if you asked me the same question a year back, most of the country was red. Now, at least that's not the problem. There's a lot more green than a lot less red, but there's still, and rightfully so, because you will have red zones in and around airports for security consideration. You will have red zones for military installations and high value high critical infrastructure. But there are mechanisms that are in place. That's why I go back to my original point. There has to be a safety case for you to fly safely. It's easier when there's if you're operating in a green. The reason you have green and yellow zones is because the risk threshold is low. You are either out there in remote rural areas where there's not a lot of population density, not a lot of critical infrastructure, you can easily operate. But as you come in closer to the airport, closer to the city, the zone will become, you need to have, in aviation, there's something called instrument flight rules and a visual flight rules. A visual flight rule, the VFR flight, is where you fly, you don't rely on the instrumentation, you're just flying just by looking out the window and flying. Where the instrument flight rule, that's when you're in a cloudy area and you can't see, you rely on instruments to fly. So a VFR equipped aircraft will never fly an IFR mission because it's not designed. So it's the same kind of thing, depending on where you're trying to operate, what your requirements are, the equipage of the aircraft and the overall safety case will vary. So it is still possible to fly in these areas, but you have to look at, I think we should be happy where we are today compared to where we were. So even if they are red zone, it's poles apart from where we were. There's enough business to do in these green areas and yellow areas before worrying about red areas. But yeah, there are red areas, but they will need specialized safety cases to get approvals and fly in them.
Okay. Mughilan, I had another question for you myself, but before that, let me just quickly ask. There's this question from the audience, Rohit Raj, asking, how is the scenario for private ownership of drones, especially for photography and videography purposes? Do we need any government approvals or licensing for this?
Great. So I think the private ownership of drones is getting much more liberalized right now. I think there's a process of, manufacturers getting certifications. I mean, there's specific, certifications for, to basically be listed in the Digital Sky, website, what kind of drone models are allowed to be owned, right? So most of the Indian owners, Indian manufacturers as well as global manufacturers today are, going through that particular process of sorts, right? So once that happens, then you get an UIN number, and then you can possibly, own these drones, right? From whatever a registered party of sorts. Right, so there's a set process, and after those process is completed, anybody can purchase those particular drone models, right? So it's getting very liberalized. I think anybody in India can potentially own a drone, right? And specifically to that point, less than 250 grams drones are considered to be toys, and you don't need anybody can potentially own those drones. Any consumer can buy those drones completely. It's completely outside the ambit of regulations of sorts.
Okay. For photography, videography, and all that, typically it'll be less than 250 grams.
So consumer drones typically, I mean, for inside house, or if you want to play with it, those are less than 250 grams. Okay. Some of the event photographers or some sort of professional photography or things like that, or wedding photography might be a little heavier. It can be anywhere between a kg to 1.5 kilos of sorts, right? So that is the typical weight of a drone. I think that is the reason why there's some amount of regulation, at least to say that this drone is particularly safe and things around that, right? So every regulation, Sujit, is basically surrounding three things. You're basically talking about safety, you're talking about security, and you're talking about privacy, right? So everywhere in the world, these are three dimensions people talk about, right? Where it's very safe, where there's no security threat and there's no privacy threat. Those are free to fly, right? Wherever these three things become more constrained in a manner, that's where you start seeing different ways and different technology ways, or different rule based to basically restrict flying of sorts, right? Okay. So in this particular case, at least in drones, they're talking about how safe is a drone, etc., right? So you don't want the drone to be falling out of the sky. So they have some mandates, just like how cell phones get regulated, very similar. But I mean, from a standpoint from 2 years ago, right now it's very liberal and very also easier to basically get license for manufacturers to possibly manufacture drones of sorts.
And you've been 6 years in the business now, so you manufacture all the drones yourself?
Not really. We don't manufacture drones ourselves. So we started doing it, but we stopped 2 years into the journey. We basically we are a complete platform company right now. So we don't manufacture any drone. We work with various drone manufacturers, both in India as well as globally. We basically, our software sits on top of them to help mission plan, mission manage, fleet manage, health manage their drones, and so on and so forth. And also, we also have a software layer which helps in collecting data from these drones and processing them and giving them insights of sorts. Very similar to what a Microsoft does with a Dell, right? So
okay. Vishal, is that going to be your model as well, or are you going to make your drones? What?
So basically, we want to provide the drones as a product also and as a service. Both will be going hand to hand. And more than providing it just the drone as a service, it will be kind of holistic end-to-end solutions where they basically get the result out of it, so that there is no gap. We don't want tomorrow a client to be kind of in a point where he has got the drone, but he's unable to fly it because of some reasons, or because he's not able to get the output he has expected or we have projected. So in order to bridge all these gaps, it's better that we give him the expected results, what he wants from, from our point of view only, from our end itself, and take it like that. Yeah. Okay. And thereafter, the thing is the services and product, which are there. So in this, we have to bridge the gap in a way that these products are basically available at the least cost possible for the consumers to have, because many of the consumers, they like agriculture. A farmer can't spend lakhs together in one shot, and where the use cases or the application of it is only for a few days in a year, right? So for that, we have to give it as a service so that it reaches to the more number of farmers and the agriculture people, and it serves more rather than sitting at a single place unused.
Okay.
So Yeah, so as to get the maximum value out of a drone, I mean, like,
Are there a lot of drone manufacturers in India?
yeah, manufacturers you will find, and definitely they are. But at the end, I think like what will be the distinguishing factor is the kind of business model which they adapt to spread it so that it is consumer friendly in a way, and also it impacts the industry as a whole. So I think that is a thing which will be changing the game. I feel so.
Okay, okay. Do we also import drones from, I don't know, where, China?
Yeah, we do. There are a lot of imports also happening.
Oh, is it?
But yes, and there are few of the major drone players across the world also, for which share is also decreasing, and due to the kind of regulations which India has. So that's why these import drones, especially some of the kind of ready-to-use drones which comes. So I mean, like, because of this regulation, it is not being practically accepted, or it is not acceptable because of the kind of regulation we have. Okay, so in their way, in that way only, like, because of the customized solution which we can bring down, like let's say today there is one drone which is doing only a day surveillance. Tomorrow, if the customer wants to have a day and night surveillance using a thermal camera, or they want to inspect their property, or want to study basically some of the kind of let's say if there's any kind of defect in the solar panel, let's say. Okay, so in order to detect that, a drone can also do. So there is the modification or the upgradation of the payload of the kind of device which it will be carrying. So if we can customize it, it will be basically easier for a customer to upgrade it as the use cases or the differs right down the line, and also in a way like the kind of customer service that they can get for the made in Indian drones, that will not match up to the kind of imported drones, I feel so. So I think these are the some of the kind of starting from the consideration to the end customer satisfaction.
Okay.
That's why Made in India movement, as you know, like the PM Modi is so much of I mean, like, after youngsters to promote the Atmanirbhar Bharat. So
Okay.
this will be definitely helping us in a lot more way and help us emerge, because right now the drone industry is basically dominated by US, China, and some of the other advanced countries. So in order to put India into the map, I mean, like, we as Indian youngsters have to gear up and basically avoid the brain drain which happens, and stand out and make a mark in the world map.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good thought. Yeah. Shilpa, I have some questions coming in. You are not able to view the questions, I think. Let me just put one to, we kind of discussed this, Amit, but I just want to put this to you. Karthik and Ramasubramanian asking, how soon can we see drone deliveries of e-commerce and food delivery become a reality? Is it a vanity project for the service providers, or can it actually become a viable and profitable mode of delivery?
That's a great question. That's $1 million question. So the answer is, it's not a fantasy. It is a reality, but it's very business case specific. And I touched on that. There are some business cases where the return on investment is high enough, whether it's financial or non-financial, non-tangible, where it makes sense and it will happen. Now, there are some novelty deliveries, like if you are living in a high rise and you want something delivered to your balcony, that's not going to happen anytime soon. So, so that's the novelty aspect. But there are—
How long do you think it'll take? How many years?
If you're talking specifically in India, something to happen at scale, experiments are already happening. So that will continue to happen. For this to even globally, it's not just in India, globally experiments have been happening. But for things to scale, you're probably looking at least different parts of the world. And it's, regulations can change pretty quickly and make things easier or harder. You're probably looking at 2 to 3 years at the earliest to see the scale happening. Yeah, but that doesn't mean nothing will happen between now and the next 2 to 3 years. Things will happen. You'll have regions, pockets, corridors where things will start happening.
Okay. I interrupted you when you were going to say something. You recollect what you were going to say?
No, that's okay. That's fine.
Okay. Shilpa, I have this one other question from Taruni Sengupta. Let me put that to Mughilan because he's 6 years he's been doing drones. Do you think drone pilot will become a sustainable career option in the near future?
100%. So Sujit, let's put it this way, right? All the existing people who have been doing surveying, inspection, right, doing all these manual work of sorts, all of them will become the new age drone pilots. Right? So it's not going to be the new people who are going to come. All the existing folk who have been doing these activities, all of them will become, drone pilots in the future. Right. So what we have to think about is the fact that, drones are going to bring a lot of new job opportunities in villages in terms of spraying and whatnot, agricultural land and all of those kind of activities, as well as, the existing people are also going to get reskilled and retrained, right? And people, just like how computers came into our life, and there were like 5 years of retraining for everybody from the government to everybody who started accepting computers into our life, right? And drones going to have a very similar effect. Right, so everybody will become, a drone pilot of sorts. He can be for hobby, he can use it for, flying, or he can use it for commercial purposes, whatever. Right, but honestly, I think everybody is going to, eventually will become a drone pilot. And also, there will be, specialized services where they'll definitely require, trained, piloting services, and there will be a huge job opportunity for these, and that's one of the reasons, Sujit, is the fact that you can also see how many drone training schools are coming up.
Oh, really?
There's a huge amount of demand for drone training right now in the country.
Oh, really?
Right? Yeah, so people are trying to embrace this as a career, right? And
apart from drone pilot, what other opportunities in these kind of schools that you're talking about?
Sorry, apart from these opportunities,
apart from pilots, what are the other things that these people are training you on?
So the point is, there is going to be another interesting going to start in engineering colleges and other places. Is what are you going to do with all these new age drone inspection or drone data is going to come in, right? So engineering courses, before we used to have something called as non-destructive testing, which basically came in. Now it's going to be like, how do you analyze information coming from a drone, right? Because these are new kinds of information, right? So these videos, these hyperspectral sensors, multispectral, these are new form of imagery and data which is going to come, and that's going to have its own set of analytics and own set of problem solving, which will also be a part of engineering curricula, right, in the future. Right, today people are talking about how, in mechanical engineering, people are talking about how to, build drones, right? So that's going to be a, separate section altogether. Let's say automobile engineering, there's going to be, maybe UAV, aeronautical, UAV engineering and things like that, right? But beyond that, I'm also seeing a place where colleges where they're talking about how we can analyze, in civil engineering, how drone data is going to change civil. In electrical engineering, how inspections are going to change completely, right? So these are things which are also going to, spawn up very soon, right? In the next 5 years, you'll start seeing people who are going to get specialized in all of these, sectors as well.
Okay. Tell me, I mean, drone pilot, the only pilots that I've seen are people who hold these remote controls and try and do it and wedding functions and stuff like that. But tell me, is that what a more sophisticated pilot also does, or what exactly?
Not really. So, I mean, there's two elements to this. Of course, there's an element of, whatever remote control and all that, but that is an age of the past. The age of the future is going to be a pilot who's going to carry his own mobile phone. He will have, softwares on it, right? He's going to pick and choose different, mission types for maybe inspecting a tower. He's going to press a button and he's going to inspect. He's going to look at the feed on his phone, and he's going to say, okay, these are the defects on the tower, right? that I can see, right? He can possibly say that, agricultural field, he goes to the field, he sees, there's going to be a lot of crop. He's going to press buttons and he's going to say, okay, how much can I spray in each one of these regions, right? So these guys are going to be, more or less being problem solving in all of these elements, and they're going to have a lot more responsible role. Just like in wedding photography, right? A drone pilot in wedding photography, takes the right shot. It's not about the drone. It's about, the perfect picture, right? And that's going to repeat across different sectors in unique ways. It's not going to be the same, unique shot, but it's going to be the, the defect that I could identify, right? It's going to be the spray that I'm going to put, right? This is going to be, the person I'm going to save in a rescue and fire and rescue mission, right? So they're going to be very, very, interesting kind of training that is going to happen in all of these cases.
Okay. Shilpa, there have, I think, a lot of audience excitement on this subject. There are some more questions coming in. Let me just put that to, the previous question on pilots was from Taruni Sengupta. This one is from Mohan Suri asking, for drone maneuvers going beyond line of sight and probably require controlling through mobile data, what's the bandwidth requirement? Who wants to take that?
So I'll answer that. So first of all, the difference between, I think one thing we need to understand is there's a difference between an RC controlled aircraft and a drone. The difference between an RC controlled aircraft is that you control it with a stick. The whole definition of a drone is it's autonomous. It flies itself. You give it a series of waypoints, so you shouldn't have to do the stick and rudder control, right? So that's the whole definition. So if you're flying in a mission, because right now, because the industry is young in India, so there's a big service provider market. So there's a need for all these pilots and stuff, because you're doing one-to-one flying. One person is flying one drone and capturing the data. Eventually, you're going to move to a one-to-many, where one person can't be flying multiple, but you're monitoring multiple drones. That's where the future is. But in the near term, it's a crawl, walk, run, right? So for the next couple, 2-3 years, yes, there's going to be a huge potential for drone pilots and stuff like that, because the market is huge. Indian market is huge, like multi-billion-dollar market. So there's a huge potential there, but eventually we are going to transition to more automated, less human. It's human on the loop versus human in the loop. And to answer the question about BV loss operation, majority of the BV loss operation, drones are relatively new in the commercial space, but they've been around in the defense space for many decades. So this technology is not new, right? So most of these missions, just because you're BV loss, you don't do stick and rudder control. You're just giving it a bunch of commands and saying, go here, go to this waypoint, go to this waypoint, and stay there. And very rarely do you take over the stick control. So if you're relying on a 5G or a 4G kind of technology, if you're relying it purely for the throughput doesn't matter. It's the latency that matters. What's the response time, right? I'm on the board for Global Luteum Association, and GSMA and GUTMA are working on something which is driving standards for what the future cellular networks need to support the drone ecosystem, right? So there are things like latency. What's the latency? A human response time is 150 milliseconds. So as long as you have less than that, if you have a cellular link, it's fine. Anything more than that might be a consideration. But most of the time, to answer the specific question, you'll be doing waypoint-based navigation. So you're not going to do stick and rudder. So it doesn't matter. The latency will matter for you to change the maneuver. And for BV loss operation, you'll never just have a single command and control link. You need to have redundant links. That's again goes back to the safety factor. The safety thresholds are different. So you see cellular might be one of the links, but you need to have other links available as well.
Okay. Let me, there's another interesting question here. This might also be for you. Since Samshri Holi asking, since drones are constrained by battery and range, can drones do payload transfer midair and increase the overall distance of travel by involving multiple drones? Is this being pursued? I think I read about this in the US and all that, right? I think
there is not actually the payload transfer. There are concepts like a recharging station. There are two where you have charging ports. So if I'm going from point A to point B and my flight time is 40 minutes, but my drone can only fly for 20 minutes. So you have charging station Just
Oh.
like electric cars, you have charging station, the concept of charging stations along the line where you can land, recharge, and then continue the flight. So there's ground-based recharging station, and then there's another concept being worked on right now, where it's just like an electric tower. It's inductive charging. So the drone comes and hovers, it doesn't sit, it hovers, and it's inductive charging. It charges, and then it keeps moving forward. So those concepts are being worked on right now.
Okay, but this mid-air transfer, not a good idea, is it?
No, there are a lot of challenges, and I'm a pilot as well, so I can go into stories there. But there are a lot. There are easier ways to solve the problem. Let me put it this way.
Got it. Got it. Shilpa, I think Vishal can take this. This is an interesting question. Kumar Samyak asking, as an electronics enthusiast, wanted to know about the circuits and processors involved in drones. Can you please give some insights? Since you're building drones, Vishal.
Yeah, sure. So basically, we'll be using like a certain stack-based development. And this is basically taken care by our CTO. So he's only actually like taking care of all those technical aspects.
Okay. Okay.
My responsibility is more looking into the kind of business prospect.
Okay.
Yeah.
But how cost effective is it right now to build a drone here versus let's say a China or something?
So basically, like definitely it is way more higher than building it in China.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, because of the kind of movement also which we have, I mean, like, and the kind of constraint which we have to make it India. That's the main thing. But the cost wise, I think like it still needs to be.
Vishal, you're breaking a little. Vishal? Vishal, you're breaking, huh?
Kind of in India also, which comes into the imported, it comes down not too much of a difference. I mean, like if you see the landing cost compared to the manufacturing of India, that is also there.
Okay, Vishal, you are breaking a little, but I wanted to know, I mean, is there something that you want from the government in order to encourage manufacture in India? I think we have lost Vishal. Maybe you can try again. Shilpa, anything? Otherwise, I think we lost Vishal. Yeah. Shilpa, any questions? Shilpa, we can't hear you. No, Shilpa, there's something wrong with your audio now. What's happening to the today? There's, I think, one more. Vishal is back. Vishal, we lost you for a brief while. I just wanted to ask you whether you want anything from the government in order to make manufacturing more viable in India. You're muted right now.
Okay, yeah. So basically, right now, what government has given us, it's pretty good to start with. I think like a lot of already liberalization and the support we are getting it in terms of PLI scheme also. So, but down the line, I think like the kind of digital sky implementation which is being talked about, just it has to be much more practically get in hand. I mean, like right now they have told like the regulations and all, but the kind of actually happening it on the ground, that is not happening. So I think if we can fasten up that process, it will be a lot helpful for the drone industries in India.
Okay, yeah. Okay. And we are almost out of time. We'll finish this in the next couple of minutes. This last question from Jatin Reddy asking, drones encountering birds midair. How is this tackled? Mughilan, you want to take that?
Oh, okay. So I don't know. There have been so many instances where drones have been attacked by birds. We have a lot of photos. Per se, during our college days, even now, I mean, for over a decade. I mean, there's an interesting, to be honest, almost a decade ago, there's a short story here, almost a decade ago, there was this one project we were working on in college where, we wanted to scare birds from the airway, right? From the airstrip, right? And the challenge really became one of the easiest way, what people are thinking about, right? Was, to put a particular designed drone of sorts, like a bird-like thing, plus with some sort of frequency of something on the frequency, which will basically emit the sound, right? It'll emit sound and it basically goes in the air, and that all the birds get scared away before takeoff of a plane, right? Because you don't want to have bird strikes, right? So that's something which was there doing a drone, but the real thing is the fact that to be candid, number of bird hits on drones have been extremely low. It's not something which is something which people should fear about, because essentially some of the drones, some of the applications are 100 meters high or 200 meters high or 100 feet high, very, very high regions, right? So we have not seen so many times where drones actually get hit by birds, not a frequent event, right?
Okay.
And in cases where there have been hits, most of the times drones usually have a return to home kind of function. Almost all drones have it today in the world, right? So basically you press a button and the drone actually comes back and lands per se, right? So it's not something which is, because number of drone flights in India is about give or take 20,000, 30,000 flights a day, right? The number of bird strikes in that is not,
Okay.
significant.
Is that a problem at all, Amit, in the US, where you probably have a lot more drones flying?
No, bird strikes are not necessarily. Typically birds stay away from drones. In some cases, like you'll see pictures in the media that they come and attack. So, but I agree with what Mughilan said. It's a rarity, and the bird strike for manned aviation has bigger impact. Like if you're flying a big aircraft versus the bird strike in case, or a bird attack for a small UAS. Now, in some cases, yes, birds have attacked and maybe gotten entangled with the propeller, which results in the drone crashing and stuff like that. There will be situations like that will happen. And unfortunately, there's no foolproof solution that you can build for that. That's just nature. Nature takes its course. But it's not, I agree, it's not something that's like a showstopper for the industry per se. It's just one of the 10,000 considerations.
Okay. Okay. Hey, thanks so much. It's been such a fascinating discussion. I know it's going to be I think we'll all be looking forward to what's going to happen to this industry. So much excitement. I know you said blood before burritos, but I think, in the public mind, they're waiting to see if a Swiggy can deliver it by a drone or something. But fascinating discussion. All of you are driving this industry in an amazing way. So we'll be closely watching to see what happens over the next few years. Thanks so much for being with us today, Amit, Mughilan, Vishal. Very nice having you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.